Don't want to post out one to have it go south on us.
I mean, it wouldn't be a true Gospel of Comics without some technical issues and some shit showiness.
This is true.
We're live, by the way.
Oh, we are. Oh, no intro. We're just cold opening. Now?
Well, I mean, I'm looking for the intro, but I wanted to go ahead and make the link live while I did this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing tonight?
I've been better, but it costs more.
And
while we're doing this cold open, do you want to listen to the the profile of some chick I just matched with on Tinder?
No, not right now.
No, that. I mean,
it's hilarious.
Is she a space alien?
It's close.
Go for it.
Let's look into your future. Tarot, occult, astrology, astral projection, dream interpretations, magic, spelled MAGICK.
Well, the CK is the way that Wiccans and most contemporary cultists spell it.
Yeah, I know. It still makes me laugh when I see it.
All right. Well, with that.
There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Well, hello, and I know it's Scion of the Red Hand. I was going with the meme. God damn it, Larry. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, the Church of Failure. You'll notice I got it right in the title. Welcome to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, the Church of Failure, and with me, as always, are my asshole co-host, Ayrton McCartney, and the guy that shows up to save the show with actual content, Larry Bernard. How you doing today, buddy?
Pretty good.
Where's the damn intern?
I think he's still asleep.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he'd probably be awake if you paid him.
I doubt that.
Shut up.
So, we're gathered here today, not in holy matrimony, but to talk comic books and aliens. Now, first off,
yes.
let's go around the horn. Do you guys actually believe in aliens? Is that a thing for you guys?
I believe it is so mathematically unlikely that there wouldn't be aliens in this universe as to be absurd. I believe whether we've actually had aliens show up on our planet is a more complicated question.
Okay. I mean, that's fair.
My answer is overly long and obnoxious, but what I think that we're seeing isn't necessarily like other planetary aliens, but they're interdimensional. And
so you're going full Alex Jones on us here.
No, I have reasonings for it, but I had this. I came up with this theory before I discovered Alex Jones and interdimensional psychic vampires and all that shit that he went off on.
I did contemplate doing the entire show in my Alex Jones voice.
We both know.
I am a gorilla.
No, it's not aliens, it's Democrats. Anyway, so we wanted to talk about aliens for what reason exactly, Larry? What did you have for us today? Hello?
He died. Larry's dead.
Larry's dead. Okay, excellent. Well, to answer my own question and make it less dramatic, I believe that our esteemed colleague Larry Bernard wanted to talk to us mainly about Area 51, but the one thing that I have been noticing in regards to aliens as of late is something along the lines of all of the shitpost articles coming out about aliens written by one Hugh Mann. Have you seen those?
I have. And I love that. It's fantastic.
Okay, well, Larry is getting his Discord together, so why don't you tell us about your week real quick while I go grab a beverage.
Of course. Yeah, I'll host the show by myself. It's fine. That'll be cool.
Okay, my connection's back now. Had a little Discord oopsie doopsie.
Okay, you're alive.
Yes,
All
I am alive. Discord discombobulated itself a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
to answer Church's question, did you hear his question?
I did not.
Okay, so
initial question.
Yes, so you wanted to talk about aliens, and what sparked this topic of conversation exactly?
So there was that news article that circulated that said the head of the Israeli space security, the head of security for the Israeli Space Agency said, "We have been in contact with the Galactic Federation, and they are holding back relations with mankind until we are ready."
I'm surprised it didn't say until Donald Trump is out of office.
Well, no, it's still Donald Delay. He eats a piece of pineapple pizza.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll never have to deal with aliens, so I'm okay with that.
And learns to cook a steak correctly.
Okay. All right.
So we definitely won't have to deal with aliens.
Oh, yeah. No. Speaking of steaks, I made the most amazing steaks last night. I got some pink salt, garlic powder,
nice,
a little cracked pepper.
So as this alien story came out,
just walking all over my
steak
story.
Brain.
Go ahead. Go
I mean, are we doing a cooking show now?
I mean, what haven't we tried at this point? I know, you know. I might bring the old Emerald bit back. Bam!
Microwave on high for 4 minutes and 32 seconds.
Get the fuck out of my kitchen.
Good steak.
Exactly. So I applied my thinking, and I realized that you, in the audience, all, 3 or 4 of you right now, can know for a fact that aliens, if they exist, our government doesn't know any more about it than we do.
Well, yeah, we discussed this a little bit off air, and my initial question is, well, what the fuck are they doing at Area 51?
It's a toxic waste site.
Well, I called it a tax dump, but sure. And there was some there were some court proceedings that kind of exposed this a while back, and that was actually fascinating for me because I'd never heard that before, but it's not hard to believe. But I don't understand. Okay. All right, Alexander. We'll get to the comic books.
Thank you for that.
Yes. I mean, you're basically parroting what we've said for a while. Not sure where that came from, but I'm glad you got that out. Welcome to the channel, buddy. But yeah, anyway, the fact that it's a toxic waste site, it makes sense, especially considering they still won't let civilians around.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why they would keep up the facade and not declassify everything at this point if there was nothing to hide.
Allegedly, the United States Air Force bombed civilian targets within mainland China during the Korean War. And that's still classified. Also, the invasion plan for Japan from the end of World War II is still classified.
But why? We already did it. Like, people know what happened. We just dropped some nukes on them.
No. That was plan A. That was plan A. I'm talking about plan B, the literal going island to island, invading and conquering Japan.
Okay.
That plan is still classified. There are still secrets from World War I that are classified. Our government doesn't like to admit bad decisions that they have made.
All right.
Like attaching bombs to bats and freezing them, then dropping them out of airplanes?
Yes. That's another thing that happened that did more damage in Japan and killed more people than both of the atomic bombs.
Well, all right. Now, before you had some Discord issues, there were some articles coming out by I can only assume a
Hugh Man.
But yeah, a shit poster with the pen name of Hugh Man. And
I love it so much.
John Delarose on Twitter has been having a field day with this, just being like, "I see you, alien." So, but yeah, it's talking about the underground bunker on Mars not existing and all of that stuff, and you know how we should just stay the fuck off of Mars because it's not habitable. And
well, I mean, Mars being habitable would require a lot of work, and our government's not good at doing a lot of work right now.
Well, it would also require a lot of technology that we don't exactly have yet.
No, you don't understand. We just put a couple of football stadiums and some weatherproofing sealant. We're fine.
A Waffle House.
Yeah.
I mean, they're actually very cheap and inexpensive ways to make habitats for Mars. But the whole expense of making habitats for Mars and, okay, well, why are we putting people there? That's the problem. There needs to be a reason to put people there.
Like actually terraforming the planet, making it a
I mean, I can think of
actually live.
I can think
we
of
don't
a
have that technology.
I can think of a great reason to put people there.
Because you can?
Yes. Not only because you can, but because, I mean, have you seen society and civilization as it stands? Put a test together. You're an intelligent human being. Here's the way out. I'm not even saying I could pass this test. I'm just saying.
You would try to pass the test.
I would try to pass the test, and I would respect everyone who did.
Would you write like notes and shit on your dick to like cheat during the test, like go to the bathroom?
No comment.
So let's get to how everybody out there in the audience can know that our government doesn't know anything about aliens. So, how much do you know about the search for extraterrestrial life and all the various scientific protocols involved?
The what now? What's the first thing you said?
SETI. He's talking about SETI.
The SETI project, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. How much do you know about their protocols?
I didn't actually answer the question. I fully believe that aliens exist and have, not been in contact with Earth, but have been around for generations. I mean, for God's sake, Michael Jordan has to be an alien. The man can fly. Secondly, Dennis Rodman is a highly advanced alien android that is malfunctioning nonstop. But that's a joke, obviously. But I do think that aliens have been around.
I would say that's more accurate about Corey Feldman.
Well, we're not going to go there. We could talk about Aaron Carter too, but this isn't a pop culture show right now. But the thing is like I think that aliens are intelligent enough to realize that we're a very self-destructive species, and they want nothing to fucking do with that.
Now there's a host of different scientific responses to why we haven't been in contact with aliens, but we're going to put all that to the side for a moment. So the structure for scientists to say, are these aliens, is they listen for signals from outer space. If they are to get a signal, they reach out to other scientists who are up at that point in time listening to outer space to have them confirm the signal. You need to have at least 2 additional confirmations. So, just like in real life, if you need 2 people to show up to do a job, you call like 4 or 5.
Right.
Just like in the government.
So, just like in the government. And 2 will show up. So
with the government, you need 2 people to do the job. They'll assign 20 to it. And it won't get done.
Yeah. And so you would have to entrust dozens of people to a government conspiracy to hide the existence of aliens. And SETI has computer software running in the background of everybody's computer who wants it that uses scan the sky and be part of a distributed computing network to do.
You're breaking up again.
Larry, you're
enlist hundreds of
again,
people.
Larry. Fix your cancer AIDS.
It's arrived since the 90s. So that's the first real problem with the premise of aliens being a real thing, and signals from aliens being reached out by our government.
Okay. I don't know. First off, I think one of Trump's last acts of being president, he should declassify everything from Area 51. That would
No, not Area 51.
Okay.
No, Area
Test,
S4.
test. Okay. I'm having a little trouble hearing you guys.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. He can't hear us.
Yes, we can hear you, Larry. Well, while he's doing that, so Area S4, that is, I'm trying to remember how far south. It's several miles south of Area 51.
This is fun. So let me try to do it this way, which is going to be horribly wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, while he's doing that. So in Area S4 is where Bob Lazar had been stationed, working on testing allegedly these various different crafts and whatnot. And so that, if declassify anything, that's what I want to know. I want to know what kind of shit they have there, based off of Bob's stories and, you know, him actually.
Fuck it, just declassify everything. Just fucking break the internet and declassify everything. Larry's back. Larry, are you back?
Right. I am back. I'm not saying it's the government that's causing problems with Discord, but if I was a conspiracy theory monger and if it would help me generate an audience to sell a comic book later, government is breaking Discord to hide the truth about aliens.
George Soros doesn't want this broadcast to get out, but we're doing it anyways.
So
it's the lizard people.
So you'd have to trust hundreds of people and rope them into a conspiracy to hide the existence of aliens. So that means that there hasn't been a signal from outer space, again, precluding the aliens supplying us with an alien cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So we know since the 1990s, there hasn't been a signal that's contacted us from aliens. But let's use the most robust stuff we have. Let's go back to 1947. And let's say, for sake of argument, that there totally were aliens that crashed at Roswell. And that's totally a thing that happened. And Harry Truman talked to the alien and everything. And the U.S. government started talking with aliens in 1947.
Well, I mean,
are you a dirty communist?
Have you seen what happened to Truman after the alleged talking to aliens? I'm not convinced he didn't.
So if this were to happen, the government would entrust the secrets of what happened at that meeting to a compartmentalized classification, need to know only. So there would be a couple of guys, we could even say 12, a majestic 12 people might be entrusted with that information. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So what happens?
What you're putting down.
What happens every 25 to 30 years with government employees?
I was going to say DC and Marvel reboot their shit, but yeah, go ahead.
Every 25 to 30 years, government employees retire. So that means that these people would have to hire new government employees. We'll say 1977 for sake of argument. So what happens again in another 25 to 30 years? Hire new employees again. So we would be 3 to 4 generations of compartmentalized government employees who have access to the secrets of aliens. None of them have told any family or friends that they were exposed to aliens. None of them just decided, you know what, I'm going to post this stuff on WikiLeaks. And again, we're going to use a very small number, 12 people completely compartmentalized with the need to know about the status of aliens. So that's like 36 to 48 people keeping a secret in the government.
Okay, so I see what you're saying, but what about, and again, I brought it up while you were having technical difficulties, Bob Lazar's story about Area S4 and how basically they break everything down so much that when you're working on these various alien quote-unquote projects, you don't actually know what you're doing. You're just handed some random piece of something and they say, like, figure it out.
The problem with Bob Lazar's story is it was about Area 51, And Bob Lazar's story just happened to come out around the same time that people were suing the government over the existence of Area 51 as a giant toxic waste site. Again, I'm not saying that Bob Lazar is feeding disinformation out there. I'm just saying it's very convenient, the timing of Bob Lazar's releases of information.
Well, how do we?
That's fair.
Hold on.
I'm not saying I believe him. I'm just saying he
No,
does have a compelling story.
Well,
it is very compelling. He's a very good storyteller.
hold on though. We've got to answer the real question about this before we get too far out into the weeds and have to move on. What about all the anal probes?
I mean, look, farmers in the Midwest get drunk and get on meth and things get in their anuses. And they have to say, listen, it's the aliens who did it. I mean, Church, you know those sorts of people.
Hey,
would you rather say it was aliens than aliens?
not a big farming community here in Toadsuck, Arkansas. Just putting that out there. Okay, not
meth on the other hand.
Meth on the other hand, but you know, we know where the thing's getting their anuses from. Oh man!
But so real quick, my last point about Bob and his story. The only thing that makes me kind of like, perk my ears up to it a little bit is him talking about this element 115 that we just recently, like within the last, I think, 6 years, synthesized it over at CERN using a super collider.
That is interesting, but once they started expanding the elements, somebody could just say element 115. Well, we don't even know what the properties of it are yet, fully.
That's fair. That's fair. But at least it made me like, okay, let me like re-look at what he was saying. I'm gonna, pay more attention to CERN because I don't trust those fuckers. I feel like they're gonna open a black hole and kill all of us. But
well, I mean, they've opened up black holes and not killed us.
True, but it takes
remember,
one dude that has a hangover and doesn't turn the machine off right.
Look, Gordon's just going to put in this cart of material into the super collider. It'll be fine. Dr. Freeman is a fine guy for toting material. But the third and final point on how I know, and you can know, that the government doesn't know anything about aliens. Let's assume, again, 1947, Harry Truman said, yep, they're aliens. I talked to this little gray dude, crashed in New Mexico. The United States government used the existence of the UFO phenomena as a tool for spying on the Soviet Union.
Right.
And the Soviets used it for a tool for spying on us. That would be a pretty massive breach of diplomatic protocol. And why would you have a very massive breach of diplomatic protocol with somebody who has the ability to fly between planets in outer space?
Well, maybe the Soviets are spying on us so that they can discover the secrets of the Scion of the Red Hand.
That is a slightly better segue than I had, because I was going to talk about are the Irish gods aliens? Because the Irish gods do have a traveling to another planet story.
Oh, well, we can double segue back to the Irish gods aliens if we have time. But what I've got here is some artwork for
yes, indeed,
for Scion of the Red Hand. Now tell us, you're the writer for this project, and you've commissioned this artwork, correct?
I commissioned this artwork from Jason Johnson.
Okay,
a professional from such comics you might know of as Impulse, and Deviate. You might also know him for doing the cover for Pandemic, done recently by your boy Richard C. Meyer. He also did a cover for the Expendables Go to Hell comic book, also for the man, the myth, the legend, Richard C. Meyer. He's been a comic book professional since 1995. So that's a 25-year comic book professional.
You've got some serious talent on this book. Like, it's not even.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could say it's out of this world.
It is out of this world talent. And Jason,
don't encourage him.
Jason, Jason is also doing work currently for Penthouse Comics,
Okay.
which I didn't know Penthouse was still publishing comics, and he does freelance work for Lion Forge.
Honestly, when the dust settles and the smoke clears, I think that porn comics will be some of the only comics keeping Diamond afloat. So,
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
But before we get into the characters and the storyline, why don't you explain to us what Scion of the Red Hand is, and how you came about starting to write a comic book.
So let me start with the second thing first. We all heard the story about J.K. Rowling, right? How she was living in welfare and she wrote a little book you might have heard of called Harry Potter and became a multi-billionaire and is literally richer than the Queen. And everybody thinks, hey, I want to try my hand at writing. And I've tried several times to write a traditional novel, traditional story, and it's a lot of words, a lot of text. And I got to the end of the process of writing a first draft, and I said, God, this is miserable. And the idea for writing a comic book had, kind of popped in and out of my head at various times. And then 2018 happened, the big boomlet from Comicsgate and independent comics happened. And I said, I should write a script. And I wrote one, first draft, made it all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can edit this and make it into a second draft. And make it into a third draft and a fourth draft. And then I was like going, well, I should get some art for this thing, so I should make a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And Scion of the Red Hand is a reference to a particular Irish legend about the O'Neill or O'Neill family and how they came to be the lords of Northern Ireland. There was a contest for who would rule that particular section of Northern Ireland, and one of their progenitor founders decided he was going to cut off his hand and throw it because the contest was whoever's hand got to the island first would win.
Okay, I mean that's
great story.
Yeah, that's I had never heard that before, but that's big dick energy
Irish
right there.
mythology's crazy as shit.
Yes, and that is on the red hand of Ulster is on the flag for Northern Ireland. And when I gave my character a last name, I gave him a last name of Cain, which was an allusion to Old Cain of Mars, which was a Michael Moorcock story that was his homage to John Carter.
Right.
And there's some John Carter homages in this story.
Oh yeah.
And as I was looking that up, it was like there's a Cain family that connects to the O'Neills. I'm going, well, I get to reference something that's extremely brutal and metal.
Right.
So I was all in on that idea.
I was gonna say that's big penis energy right there. I love it.
Exactly. So that was what inspired me. There was a lot of interesting little moving parts that all came together for this story. So, do you guys know what isekai anime is?
Let's say no.
So it's called Journey to Another World. There have been various things in that anime genre. It's extremely popular. Lots of manga in the genre, but actually, it's a standard trope in fantasy fiction, and it actually goes back, in the case of Ireland, to what's called the genre of otherworld stories, about a hero who goes from our world to the other world where the fairies or the gods are from. And that was sort of one of the things that was going into my head. And all these stories tend to be about 13 to 14-year-olds becoming the magical lord of awesomeness when they go to this other world. And there was an old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which never finished because it was the 80s. When a cartoon didn't finish, you never got to finish. So somebody at DC Comics was writing a backup story to the D&D licensed comic, and he gave those characters an ending. And they were all grown-up adults. They had become seasoned Dungeons and Dragons adventurers, and they were at a bar. And Presto was wanting to go to the big Elminster the Wizard to try to become his pupil and become an awesome wizard on the world. So that idea was always fascinating to me. The idea of you're whisked away to the other world, but you're not automatically the hero. So Brian got whisked away for this other world in 1990.
Okay,
and he grew up.
That's the character I currently have up on screen.
That is the character you currently have up on screen.
Okay.
And he had a little bit of a struggle in growing up and becoming an adult. And the story is about how the the adventure finds him at this point in his life, not the, you're the 13 to 14-year-old swept up to the magical world of awesomeness and destined to save the world.
Okay. All right. And then I've got the characters here that you sent to me in order of appearance. So moving straight along, we have Huck.
Huck, yes. Huck is a goblin. And when I designed the goblin, I brought in a lot of Japanese and Korean and Mongolian influences to the character.
Damn Mongolians, it break down my shit, wow.
Yeah, which Jason really enjoys drawing this particular character because of all the different little features to it. And he's a merchant. That's why you see the merchant caravan truck there. And he picks up Brian at the beginning of the story. Brian saves his life, and so he brings him into the city. Just look at all the little gnarled horns and fangs and stuff there. And there's an interesting dichotomy about the goblins that will be touched on in later stories. Because right now in fantasy, goblins are just treated like a standard fantasy race, but they're also sometimes monsters. So in the world of Ilos, goblins are normal fantasy people some of the time, but they eventually turn into monsters.
Right.
And kind of like Italians.
Oh. So if this project ends up being successful, there's going to be more stories and more detail going into the curse on all of goblin kind.
Okay.
But the goblins, because of the Mongolian look, the goblins once ruled a great and mighty empire, but it ended up falling apart because they all warred and feuded with each other.
Okay. And then going down the line, we have Tion?
Yeah, Tion.
Okay.
So Tion is a princess, and she's a human, and she's also a wizard. But the religious edicts of the society prohibit humans from being wizards. But she's pretending like that doesn't apply to her because, she's a young girl and a princess, and she's not entrapped in the society and the ethics and morals of the royalty. And if you zoom in on that little pendant there around her neck, the neck, which is
let me get to it.
Pendant,
tell me how to live my life.
There is actually her spell book, which is a cool little feature I added on there. I said to Jason, yeah, we need to do that. And obviously you put the Kirby dots there for the magical effect because that's awesome.
Yeah, the Kirby dots, they gave me the stiffy. I'm always a big one for Kirby dots. Was it was it his work at Marvel that did that? Was it like Silver Surfer? Or did I believe
I
New Gods?
think he started that at Silver. I think he started that in Silver Surfer, but he just ran whole hog with it in New Gods.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, because
I think
without Kirby, we never would have had all of the, Space Marvel and stuff like that. And without Space Marvel, we never would have had Rom the Space Knight. And without Rom the Space Knight, I would be a sad boy.
But also without the toaster in the Marvel bullpen, there wouldn't be Rom the Space Knight.
Oh yeah, well.
Because, Ayrton, I don't know if you know this, Rom the Space Knight was named after the toaster in the Marvel bullpen.
Yes. He's not wrong.
I did not.
And it's also the worst. It's also the worst Marvel toy ever created.
I forgot because I drank a lot.
No, I never told you about the toaster.
I actually got Rom as a Christmas present when I was like 7 or 8.
And you really wish you would have gotten Micronauts instead.
I mean, I didn't actually learn about the Micronauts till later, but yes, if I'd known about the Micronauts then, I would have preferred the Micronauts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next picture is an alternate version of Tion, which shows a little bit of my inspiration for the character and the sort of flavoring I have around magic in there. Because magic comes from, in humans at least, a dark place, or at least that's what everybody believes. And so that's her in a dark sort of Galadriel inspired look.
Now, is her necklace supposed to be missing in this frame, like ghosted out?
It goes out because magic.
Okay. I didn't know if that was just an inconsistency. Like her bracelets are that way, so I figured it was intentional, but I didn't know why.
Yeah. And so again, this is her going into that sort of dark, magical, forced person.
So she's not actually magical. She's a Saiyan, and she's just going Super Saiyan.
Well, no.
I'm joking because of the hair.
Yeah. Because of the hair, obviously.
I joke.
And she's the
Still
female
feeling
lead.
Italian.
She's the female lead character, with Brian as the male lead character. And the story is about both of them going through a process of initiation.
Okay. All right. And this
She ends
folks,
up getting the.
I just want to say, this folks is, for those of you watching and those of you catching the replay, this is more than you get out of an Indiegogo campaign. So drink it all in. Like you're getting an idea of why you should buy this comic directly from the horse's mouth, as opposed to, just seeing some pictures on an Indiegogo campaign.
Like that.
Yeah. That's why we go to YouTube to do this, to be entertaining.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but like I said, you're actually giving them a detailed explanation. Even so, like, you get the elevator pitch on most shows. In the Gospel of Comics, we sit back and we let our guests just go on and tell as much as or as little as they want to about their books. It's in their court. Not just elevator pitch time here.
You gotta love those people that just give you one sentence answers and you have to drag more content out of them.
Oh yeah. Now we've got Milan here. Milan.
Yes. So that's an elf from the setting, and I decided that elves needed to have more of a cat-like influence to them. And he's a bardic ranger character who's like a warden of the land. And he's part of the adventuring band with Princess Tian that Brian ends up joining in the comic book story.
So you've got kind of a Lord of the Rings feel to this story, it seems.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a strong D&D influence in this. So you kind of want to have certain things in there because it just makes the story easier. So Brian ends up being brought in to join this group to help them on a mission, which just happens to be the sequence of comics that pages that I have ready to be lettered here shortly are all of that particular sequence. So it's 8 pages that show.
We'll get to the pages. Yeah, we'll get to the pages. We got characters to go through for the moment.
Yeah. And so basically when I talked to Jason about how to draw his costume I wanted something that was both a ranger look and a bardic look.
I've got to applaud you and Jason especially, because there's a certain expectation that we in 2020 have for goblins and elves, and these artistic depictions completely just subvert those expectations.
This is how you subvert expectations in a positive way.
Right. And that's what I was getting at. Like, I'm not unhappy with the way that goblins and elves have been depicted. There's only so many ways you can do a barbarian, which is what I assume the base class for Brian was based on. But, a human is a human is a human.
That's actually traditional Irish warrior garb as a 13-year-old described it to somebody in a fantasy world.
Yes, it's a barbarian.
How dare you?
But, when it comes to goblins and elves, there's, the Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering have told us what goblins and elves were. And while you do have some high fantasy influences here, you can definitely see more of the feline features that you were describing. And it's not like this, I'm high and mighty and, just upper royalty type feel to this elf. Like, he looks like he's wearing rags like everybody else.
And also, the elves are going through a period where they're in decline. Something I took from Tolkien and actually from a webcomic, and I hope to go further into that storyline later. But this is an elf not in the best days of the elven people.
Okay.
So the next one should be Typhon.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
who is
Another
a
lady.
half-elf female.
Another lady.
Yes,
We've
half-elf
got
female.
we've got boob armor. Was that a conscious decision, or was that just your submitting to the patriarchy?
I was not micromanaging the artistic decisions here.
Okay.
I think I did point to several different interesting art types. Now she is a half elf, so
Right.
you see sort of a more softened human features towards
Right.
her, and
Shorter ears, more coarse hair. You can actually see where the hair isn't perfect like it is on the elf. You got some strands sticking out. Again, just the subtle stuff in this design. It makes me go a big rubbery one. I love it.
And the boob armor. How dare
exactly. Now she is a paladin in the religious order for the god of the humans.
Okay. What does that mean?
Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. Well, why would you say it if you didn't want to get into it?
Because there should be a character that says God King next.
Yes, there is. Oh, is that all we have for this character?
Well, no, I was going to go into a little bit more details there.
Actually, no, there is not a character called God King next. Next thing I have is the cover.
Okay. So the God King is featured on the cover. Okay. I was probably wanting to be a tease about that character. But once we get to the cover, I'll point him out. So she's actually a best friend for Scion. Okay. And she's dating Melon.
Okay.
They're in a relationship. And she's part of the adventuring party.
Mm-hmm. So the adventuring party is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is slightly larger than the typical D&D adventuring party. If you're running a D&D table, 6 people, you're like going, it's a lot of people to run for a D&D game.
No, you want to run 6 people because at least 2 of them aren't going to show up every session.
That's why you agree to run 6 people.
Right.
That is exactly why you agree to run 6 people.
Now, my question is not in the D&D sense, but in the writing sense. How hard is it to make all of these characters relevant and not get sidetracked, like just going off about 1 or 2 of them? Like, is it
funny
hard?
Story.
Okay, go ahead.
So funny story, because you have this specific character going on. There's a euphemism called warfing a character. So in Star Trek: The Next Generation, if you had a tough, badass alien, obviously they beat the shit out of Worf. The problem is that that's 9/10 of the fighting you see, so it makes Worf look terrible.
Right.
So the second draft, as I wrote her fighting in there and certain other things, I'm like going, I need to make this character not be Worfed. So that was a focus that happened during the writing. Is I had her have a character moment where she does well in combat, and where she has, some relevant tensions with other characters in the story. Otherwise, I'd say like she's just there as baggage.
Okay. Okay, but my question was more or less, how is it like writing for 6 characters, like and making sure that none of them get lost?
It's a lot. It's a lot of work, and I'm going to stick with 48 pages on the campaign. Now, if I may do a stretch goal with like backup stories, but I'm sticking to 48 for the main story.
Okay.
6 characters in 48 pages is a lot. That is hard.
Okay.
That is very hard. And I did make a lot of effort that every character has something they're doing that drives the plot along.
Okay. So, are you ready to talk about the cover?
Let's talk about the cover.
Let's talk about the cover. So,
let's talk about the cover.
I've got the cover pulled up here.
Sorry, I felt left out.
All right. Now, I got the cover colored because Jason hooked me up with a friend of his who's a colorist, and I'm definitely going to put a stretch goal in for coloring the main pages because that's expensive. That adds to the bullet point. So you see that guy with the big sword standing right
the gold armor guy.
Yeah, that is the god of humanity. Now,
okay,
when when Jason drew this, I'm like going, he really shouldn't be there in that scene. But I'm like going, that's just too cool to not have him be there, even though
Right.
that doesn't make sense. Sometimes that happens in a comic book. So
Yeah.
you see down there at the bottom, the spider
Mm-hmm.
who looks really good and spidery.
Yep.
And all the characters are going forward, like they're going to punch the spider and the reader in the face with action and adventure.
Mm-hmm.
That was my idea for the cover. When Jason showed me a couple of different options, I said, yes, we need to do that.
Okay. I mean, I dig it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the Mohawk is interesting on Brian as a character. So when I was working through his character design, I was asking some acquaintances on Facebook, like, on how do I make this character do something that is both rebellious for him as a 13-year-old from 1990, but also fits within a warrior culture's ethos so that they wouldn't actually consider it a big deal. And Mark Rain-Hagan, the inventor of Vampire the Masquerade, gave me the idea to give him a mohawk. And like once the mohawk was there, I like going, yeah, this is the character right there. The mohawk was that final piece that made everything work for me.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine this this character without that mohawk. Like, let's go back to the actual character page.
The character image,
Yeah.
the mohawk really makes the character
Like,
something more than just a standard barbarian warrior character in a fantasy.
right.
Yeah, that mohawk there, especially how it's kind of rough.
Right. Well, I mean, it's one that he did himself. Probably with a
And
sharp blade.
Yes.
But,
And the sword that he has is actually something from the Celts in Spain. It's not Irish appropriate, but it's just a really cool looking sword. Because it's a type of sword that's made for basically cutting at things like an axe. So it's a much more violent sword.
I can get behind that. Now,
Yeah.
do you have anything to tell us about the spider, or is that something we're going to have to wait for the book on?
Well, the spider is going to be a key featured thing in the book,
Okay.
but you'll find out more about the spider in the book itself.
Okay.
The spider isn't the main story, but it's a very traditional D&D thing. Like a new adventuring party is assigned to go out and get stuff for a wizard.
Yeah.
And a giant spider is a monster that can reasonably kill a newbie adventuring party,
Mm-hmm.
but also that they could reasonably do okay with if they're not stupid.
Yeah, they just don't need
So
to
that
make any
was-
deals with it.
Well, yes, you don't want to make a deal with a spider. You never want to do that.
So we've got some pages here. I think we have page
No,
9.
oh wait,
Is that
wait. There's another character there's another character I sent you that's in the picture here that I don't think you actually pulled up her image on.
No, I did. I
Make
pulled
sure
up
I-
6 images, and we have 7 characters. So
Let me double check that because there's one that's missing that's actually in the cover. Let me scroll up here. 'Cause-
oh no, there is, and you didn't send me that one.
Huh, I didn't send you her. That was a explicit mistake. So
That was an
I'm going
oopsie.
that was an oopsie. So if you go immediately above the God King, if you could zoom in on
you
that,
can send me
lady
the
there.
image. I can pull it up in no
Well,
time.
Okay, give me a second. So the character is the Morrigan, who is a very particular goddess in Irish mythology.
Okay.
And she's very complicated, and because she is a goddess affiliated with warriors in battle, of course she has been in a few comic books.
And
so
this
the
is,
first
I'm
thing,
assuming, the dark-haired girl in between the god of humanity and Tion.
yeah, I have him titled King for right now because the god of humanity that would mean I might get a letter from Games Workshop's lawyers. I don't want to do that. Likewise, calling him a god emperor, they might send me a stern letter, even though they probably can't put in an ownership on.
I don't think you can
the idea of
trademark
it.
the words, but you know,
No.
If he looked like it and you called him it, then maybe. But
Yeah, but Games Workshop would be there. So
Just-
now that
Just send him a
character's
letter back
image,
that says trademark these nuts.
yeah. So now I've sent you that image, so you can pull that one up.
the Morrigan.
Yes. So I took every version of her from Marvel and DC and Image Comics that I could find, and I said we need to do something different than all three of these. Actually, there's like 4 or 5 because DC did a couple different versions of her. And I also got into some music related to the Morrigan and some other stuff. It gave Jason a lot of different materials to work with.
This is the one that Ayrton would hit on after 3 beers.
3.
So,
What do you mean?
so when you get into
that's the person I'm immediately talking to at the bar.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you notice there's a white raven on her shoulder there.
Yes.
So the Morrigan is a goddess of life, death, battle, birth, fertility, history. She was originally sort of a bardic character that basically everybody loved, so she kept getting added more and more in the story of the Irish mythology and became a much larger figure. She's like the Valkyrie and the Fates all rolled into one. And she's a very brutal and violent woman. And when I was writing the story, somebody gave me a suggestion that I needed to add in a narration at the beginning. And she metaphorically in my head said, well, of course I should be the narrator of the flashback at the beginning of the story. And likewise, when she got written into the book, I was alluding to her, but I didn't plan for her to be in the story initially. And then a voice of inspiration said, why don't you just make it the Morrigan since you're alluding to her being the character?
Well,
So,
here's the thing that I have to say about all this. Like, just looking at some of her accents and jewelry and whatnot, it looks like she makes jewelry out of dead animals. And I've known a couple of chicks that do that, and they're all bad news.
They're always so much fun.
See,
now, if you
2 kinds of people, folks. 2 kinds of people.
Exactly. Now, if you can pull up Brian's image for a minute, there's going to be like a little sigil that's on his belt that you'll look at.
I've got
that
it. I got it pulled
symbol. It is the symbol of the Morrigan.
Okay.
And so he's on a fantasy world where he's been swept up away from Earth.
Now,
goddess.
Did you actually get into, he's obviously not 13 in this image, so how much time has passed since he was transported to this world?
He's in his later 20s.
And he's just acclimated to this? Like, is there going to be like a backstory or just kind of like a flashback of what all happened?
There's a flashback very much inspired by the flashback from the first Daredevil, where it's like a couple of pages telling you, here's the stuff you need to know to understand this character and where he came from.
Okay.
So Brian was originally a Navy brat from Virginia. His dad was a naval officer, and he went to a family vacation in Mesoamerica, and he fell down a cenote, a giant sacrificial well, and it transported him to an alien planet where strange fantasy creatures threw him into slavery. He tried to do a slave revolt, but they realized, wait, this slave is smart enough to understand things that he shouldn't understand, and he can read. So he then got taken away to be used properly, trained to be a skilled warrior, and thus leading to him eventually getting to this adventure.
Okay.
So the Morrigan sees this person from Earth, sees her emblem on him, and that's the moment where this story starts to change from a very generic D&D fantasy kind of story into something deeper.
Now,
and that's when you get into the deeper moments of the story.
Now, and this could, if this spoils anything in the book itself, then feel free to take a pass on it, but is he intentionally wearing that symbol, or is it just something that he's picked up in passing?
Well, the Morrigan is one of the coolest features from Irish mythology and folklore. So, of course, a kid who's 13 who wants to make himself look like a traditional Irish warrior, of course he's going to wear that.
Well, and don't take this as anything but like just a critique of that thinking. But he's not 13 anymore. If he's in his early 20s, then he wouldn't have that same mentality of a 13-year-old.
Right, but how many people
again,
still hold on to stuff from when they're 13?
I was getting to that. I'll give you credence in saying that men never really age past 14. Our toys just get more expensive.
Exactly.
I mean, I still have a guitar from around that age.
Yeah. So that's so he's basically wearing this because he's become somebody from the Irish folklore stories that his father told him.
Okay.
He's become that sort of a character, and so that's why he wears it. Which becomes important, obviously, because he's been transplanted to this strange world.
Now we're at just over an hour, or just under an hour. Do you want to get into the pages?
Yeah.
And talk about those? Because it looks like we have pages 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
Yes.
Okay. Now, these are not lettered pages. But,
these are not lettered pages. Actually, wait, let me double check here.
No, they're not. I've
I
looked
got
at them.
you. No, that's not what's double checking. 12, 10, 13, 14, 11.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, you actually have 9 through 14. Yeah.
Yeah, I put them in order so that we could go through them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a good host like that.
Yeah. So let's start with page 9.
All right. So it
Because
looks like
what I like about page 9 is the first panel is one of my favorite things in that page.
Yep, I've got that pulled up. Go ahead.
So that's the wizard who is presenting Brian with a sword that he has enchanted.
Right.
You got your cool little magical emblems on there.
Right, your runes.
And his getting that sword, his payment to the wizard is becoming involved with the new adventuring party.
Right, and I'm assuming this adventuring party is looking at him like, why are we getting stuck with this noob?
Well, no. The wizard has experience, and he's hired Brian to make sure they're safe. Now, I want you to see there. You notice that bartender?
Yeah.
Can you zoom in a little bit on his face?
Yeah. Let me.
So, how much do you know about Conan the Barbarian?
A good deal, actually.
So, in Conan, there's a story called the Tower of the Elephant, I think it's called, where there's an elephant alien that Conan has to kill to save him from a life of servitude and all that. And so the bartender was influenced by that character. So that's why there's the Elephant Man bartender there.
Yeah, that was Conan Exiles, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, it was featured there. It's one of the most famous Conan stories.
Oh, okay. So that was in the game, Conan Exiles.
Yes.
But it was one of the original short stories in the Sword and Sorcery series. And he was called Conan the Cimmerian.
The Cimmerian.
Well, I'm Southern. Get off my back.
So the two guys at the end of the bar there, they get into a bar fight, and Brian stops the bar fight from happening by using his violence to negotiate that.
Right.
And what is great is that you can tell all of that story just by looking at the art.
Mm-hmm.
The art in and of itself tells an excellent story. And then Huck the Goblin comes in, and he's not happy.
Almost like a comic book.
What? No.
What?
And if you
gotta Brian Michael Bendis this up by putting word panels over everyone's faces and everything that's happening.
My God!
Now, if you look at how the violence is used to resolve the fight, I actually took something that I always thought was cool from the Hulk comic book. There was the run where you just saw Bruce Banner, and then you would see the aftermath of the Hulk doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was why those two panels there with the fight of him like pounding his fist in the air, knocking one person to the ground and telling the other person what to do. And Then Huck the Goblin comes in to be upset at Brian and tell him something. And when I saw the rough for this page, what was great is I knew exactly what page it was from the book. And the rough told all the story exactly as I laid it out in my head.
Right. And I like the little detail again. He's not just hitting this guy again because he got back up, but you see the guy's holding a dagger to stab him in the back. And somehow Brian has the spatial awareness to understand that there's somebody like coming up to attack him from behind, and while he's getting yelled at by a little 3-foot tall goblin, he's hitting somebody with his elbow.
Exactly.
Just fuck off, cunt.
Basically.
And this is where the goblin ends up joining the adventuring party as well.
Okay. All right. So then we move on to page 10 here, and I won't show your blue line just in case that reveals too much.
So page 10. Pull that one up here. So page 10 is them sitting around the table talking about events that are about to happen. The two guys who got into the bar fight leave. And now if you'll notice in the bottom corner there, the guy who shakes hands with Brian, that guy is a half-orc.
Okay. Piggish features. I like it.
My what I said for the half-orc is man-bear pig. Half man,
Half bear, half pig.
half pig.
Yes.
And so that was immediately the idea that came into my mind for a half-orc. And I think that looks really good.
It does. It does. I like it. And if you get colors, he needs to be like the sickly pale green.
I mean,
like
that is the traditional orcish color.
No,
Or
I'm not talking about the full, Pantone 346, 345 green. I'm talking about this really light, sickly pale green.
Right
Almost
on.
like what someone would call a mint green, but as a flesh color, it just looks like a dirty flesh tone, almost.
Now, what was really cool is when Jason was promoting this, he actually used the sequence of them all eating around the table for Thanksgiving, which I thought was super awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, RuneKnight, welcome to the show.
Oh, Joe. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, you're finally here.
Do
Do you have my coffee, goddammit?
Yes, I do. But to find your coffee, you must answer my questions 3.
And also great, what I really like is the princess is taking a very ladylike bite out of a piece of meat.
Yes.
That's another nice touch in that sequence.
Yes.
And again,
now here's the thing: she's got a foul leg while there's a boar on the table.
Yeah.
So she ordered extra meat, even though there's a fully cooked roasted boar in the middle of the table.
Exactly. And again, while you may not know the story that goes behind all these sequences, all of these pictures, again, show a clear story.
Right.
You look at the top panel here, Huck's arguing with Brian. There's other events going on. People are leaving who aren't supposed to be there.
Tuck's still pissed off at Brian at the table. You see Brian staring at the elf for some reason, even though the goblin's still giving him the side eye. The man-bear pig walks up, and they have a
bro moment.
Yeah, they have a bro moment, and it seems the goblin is pleased by this.
Yes.
So, again, sequential artwork done correctly.
Yes. And when there have been some very small and subtle changes to my original scripting that Jason did, he mainly did those to make sure that there was actually room to put in word balloons. Because I mean,
so
I
you're
know
not going to cover the artwork with.
I mean, why would you do that?
Because you're Brian Michael Bendis, and your words are more important than beautiful artwork that you get.
No. Literally, as I wrote the comic, I would look at the words I wrote and I said, Am I being Brian Michael Bendis that I took a serious assessment to say?
Can I say this in less words? Yes, that's something that all writers should ask themselves all the time.
So we go on to page 11, where we see the spider for the first time.
Not the spitter. And, of course, Brian just goes, like, dick first into it. Like, I'm going to charge this spider!
Exactly.
I don't like the way he's looking at me.
I assume that the word bubble on this panel is going to be Leroy Jenkins! No?
Now,
am I wrong? I'm wrong, aren't I?
You kind of hit a little hiccup here.
Oh, you didn't hear me?
No, I didn't hear you.
Oh,
no.
I said I assume and I'm sorry, audience, but I have to do it again. I assume the word bubble on this panel is going to say Leroy Jenkins.
No, but it definitely has the Leroy Jenkins energy. Now, what you do see in the sequential art in question, Huck and Brian break off for the party and encounter a spider, while the party encounters a second spider.
A second spider, yeah. RuneKnight, so there's two.
It's like arachnoception.
Yeah. So RuneKnight, what do you never do in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign?
RuneKnight is dead.
He's muted. Okay. So yeah, what you're not supposed to do is split the party. So of course, in the first major action sequence in the game here of this comic, we split the party. We have the hero and the goblin, the more competent of the two, vigorously going after the spider, whereas the others are trying to capture the spider alive and harvest it.
It's the same spider, though, right?
No, there's two spiders.
Oh, okay.
The party split off to capture two. Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then we move on to page 12, and we see some dynamic paneling, which is one of my favorite things to talk about in comic books.
Oh God, yes. This is beautiful. This dynamic paneling here. This was beautiful. So I said 5 panels. This panel structure was entirely Jason's idea, and it looks great. I love every part about it.
Yeah, and it works too. Like the spider is having its way with the secondary party. They try their best to tame it. They get the shit kicked out of them. Brian shows up, and it looks like he's ready to heave a sword into it.
No. Look at the middle panel.
No, I see that the wizard basically has to wizard them out of it.
Yes,
but it looks like Brian showed up.
Brian.
Yeah, but it looked like Brian showed up to save the day just in case. In the background.
Yes,
which tells you without even seeing it on panel that he and Huck are done with their spider.
Yeah. And she, of course, embraces him because this is the first thing she has ever killed. And she feels a little emotions about it.
Okay. All right. Now, one thing I would say in the art editing process is just make sure you're consistent with the timeline passing and the amount of hair growth, or you do throw a little, like, spot in there where he's shaving the side of his head again at a campfire or some shit.
Oh, God, that is something cool to throw in for another story, yes. I will definitely add that in.
Yeah.
And so the next page, they go off to get cleaned up because they have spider guts all over them.
Right, like you do.
And they encounter...
We've all been there.
We've all been there. And they encounter a mysterious crone who has a campfire. She's washing clothes, which means nothing to the other characters in the story but Brian. Because that is one of the forms the Morrigan takes. The washer of the Fords. She's the woman who washes your clothes and decides if you live or die.
And it looks like Huck is suspicious of her because he seems to be the smartest one of all of them.
Well, I mean, he's a goblin merchant. he should be suspicious of everybody.
Are,
I mean,
are you trying to name
you-
someone without actually naming them with that? We're not.
I'm just
Do we
saying
have a
from your
side profile of him?
It's- there's no point, is there? I mean, is that horn representative of something?
no, that's just something cool from Korean goblin art.
We're joking. We're
That I
joking.
really
Anybody
like.
that gets those
No,
jokes, we're kidding. We're kidding. Please
Yeah.
don't
Anyone
ban
that
us
gets
off
those
YouTube.
jokes, you're terrible people.
And join our Discord
And-
because you belong there, apparently.
Yes, exactly.
And page 14, which is the page that was last completed,
Okay.
the crone immediately traces the emblem on Brian's belt and reveals herself to him. Now, the particular word is the little phrase she says to him in the sequence is, "You know who I am." Because he looks at her with appropriate fear and reverence.
But everyone else still sees her as the crone, and you can see that in the artwork.
Yep. Because magic and shapeshifters.
Right.
And she then escorts Brian away from the rest of the party.
Never make a deal with the goddess.
Well,
Well, it depends on how big her tits are.
Also, never snub the Morrigan. That went real bad for Brian Baruch.
I'm going to step
Or
away
before.
for a moment, but I feel like Joe
Bad
needs
for
to be
Colin,
filled in.
sorry.
yes. Yes.
So,
So,
Ayrton and Joe, I'm
so,
leaving the helm to you guys.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
yes, this is the last completed page. The next two pages in my initial campaign packet are currently being finished. And Brian, being the person from Earth, recognizes the Morrigan as the Morrigan, and he goes off with her to have a little chat. And Tion realizes,
Little Chad, I'm sure he does.
hey, wait a minute, something's not right here. And so the sequence you're seeing here is the fighter being introduced to the party that their principal melee person was a paladin. And also bringing a generic goblin rogue, going off to fight some things, and then they encounter a deity who's not supposed to be there.
Excuse me, the family name is Generic. That is an old reference for old men.
Exactly. I appreciate that reference. Now, the reason the Morgans in this story is Irish legends were very weird, and they were an oral tradition that was written down by Catholic priests. And I'm going to read how the Tuatha De Danann were introduced. Only 37 years passed before a new race came to Ireland. They arrived in a mist. And when that mist cleared, the Firbolg saw a beautiful tower, and the ships of the new arrivals all in flames. They met their new arrivals, the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess, and learned that they were all related. These were the remnants of people of Nemid, who were an earlier race in Ireland, who had gone north, but where the Firbolg had suffered greatly, the Tuatha De Danann had prospered, journeying through 4 magical cities, gathering enchanted treasures of great power, developing their wisdom and skill. The difference between them was notable. The Firbolg were short, dark, and hairy, with crude weapons, and the Tuatha De Danann were tall, golden, and beautiful, with light and brightly shining weapons.
Interesting. Oh, okay. I see. I see why. All right. So, and we're back.
We are a professional
Okay.
bit here.
Fucking
Yes,
Discord.
we're totally professionals and not running our broadcast on shoestring and baling wire.
Out of the back of a van on the run from out of the back of a van on the run from the popo.
So while we were on quiet, Church mentioned how the best way to get your tattoo done right is to tell your artist, "Here's my idea, go run with it." And I was talking about as I developed my relationship with Jason as we were doing this project together. I said, you've done urban fantasy, you've done steampunk, you've done space fantasy, you've done superhero fantasy, but you've never done fantasy fantasy. And it turns out one of his first comic things he tried to get done, that the project never ended up coming together, was a fantasy story that had a giant spider in it. So it's a great synchronicity about how all this came together with the project. And
That's
a lot of the themes in the art and the images, I basically said, here's my cool ideas. Go have fun with it.
that is a really true in the sense that in my own tooling around and trying to get work done, I have found a surprising number of artists, international at least, who work in the on commission sphere, often doing like porn, who were really excited and really happy when it's like, we'd like you to do something that's not porn that you can show your mother, and they're like, do I get to like do action poses? It's like, yes. It's like, do I get to do like people with muscles? It's like, yes. And they're like, yeah.
Exactly. So this is the comic. So do you guys have any other questions or things you want to poke at?
Well, usually in this type of interview, we always ask the guest first and foremost, where did you get into comics in the first place? Like, what was your first foray into comic books as a kid,
Well, I mean,
a teenager?
I'm a man of a certain age, so I grew up when
Yeah, you're
Superman
815 years old. We know that.
Yeah, I grew up when Superman the movie came out. So that was one of the starting genesis points. Also, my father was a pulp novel collector. My dad was primarily focused on James Bond and the Destroyer series.
Okay.
Now,
So
does that
there
mean
was-
that you're a Doc Savage and a Warlord of Mars guy?
I came around to those later. I came around to all of those later, and I want to get back to Warlord of Mars a little bit in just a second here.
Yeah.
But of course, I started picking up comic books because again, I'm a man of a certain age. So when we wanted to pick up comic books, they were in the grocery store. They were in 7-Eleven.
You could get a fucking comic book at the barber shop.
Exactly.
There was this.
So,
Larry and I came up in a similar era. There used to be this little thing called the newsstand where you could go to get all your periodicals, newspapers, and comic book needs.
Exactly.
Okay, look, those little wooden boxes of people in them only exist in movies.
So my big comic book I got involved into was Spider-Man at that point in my life. Then my parents got divorced and my mother decided she needed male mentor figures for me in those early few years, and one of them was a massive comic book collector. So that led to more comic books coming into my life. I, at one time, had a Marvel Comics subscription to What If, where I got that mailed directly from Marvel Comics.
Oh, so you got some of the good ones. Like you were one of the first people introduced to What If Jane Foster got the Hammer of Thor.
I didn't. I was in the second series of What If, not the original.
Okay, okay. My dad had the original run of that, so I saw that. And What If Wolverine had actually killed the Hulk? That was a good one.
Yes. I think they reprinted that one. So yeah, I got into that, and I've been popping in and out of comics as comics have moved in and out of my sphere of influence. I moved away once the 90s crash happened. Then I came back when comics started to resurge a little bit in the early 2000s. And then we entered into the age where I described it to a friend as, you know when they say you can't judge a book by its cover? If you look at these comic books, you can totally judge them by their cover.
Well, sometimes.
What?
Sometimes you can judge comic books by their cover. Other times, cover artists are assholes and they put shit in the cover that has nothing to do with the actual book.
So
What, you
that's
don't
actually
think that Starfire whatever comic doesn't look good?
Yeah.
Based on the
it
cover?
doesn't look good. It does.
I mean, that's clearly an action roller coaster.
But what's funny about the cover is when I was going through my process and getting the cover decided on, Perch, I talked to him about it, and I also talked to the owner of my local comic book shop, and the number one thing they said is have the same artist do the cover art that does your book art.
Yes. You don't want to deceive people. You don't want to have an Alex Ross cover with fucking, B or D level artwork in the insides.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that was picked on, and they also said have the cover at least represent something in your book. And as you saw by the pages, it does represent something that's in the book, not necessarily what actually happened.
But they do fight spiders.
They fight a spider. We've seen it in the pages that are shown here,
mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that I was inspired to do. And also another reason why I ended up hooking up with him as the artist is I asked Peter Samedi for advice, and he said the number one thing for fantasy comics is you need art that will make you stand out.
Yeah.
Because there are fantasy comics that are a dime a dozen that have mediocre art that will never go anywhere in crowdfunding.
Right.
So I'm shooting big on the art, figuring that will help me get to the finish line.
Now, my secondary question is, and we kind of covered this earlier. What made you decide to write a comic book? Now, you said that you had tried your hand at like novel writing and prose writing and things of that nature. But
yeah,
was it anything besides the explosion of the indie scene?
I had thought about it, but the explosion of the indie scene was really just what lit the match, and I said, why not?
Okay.
And I wrote it, and then I wrote something that I didn't absolutely hate and didn't feel damaged to the insides of my soul. And not want to rewrite, because you birth this 50 to 100,000 word document and you just look at it going, I hate everything about how it ended up going now. So I don't want to revise this. I just want to close the door on this failure, never to return.
Hey, Novel Bro, good to see you, buddy.
What's up?
Hey, Novel Bro.
But
Novel Bro, you'll enjoy this more on the replay when you get to hear it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we talk about aliens and Irish mythology in this.
Yes.
And the Jews.
So, what you're saying...
No, we talk about the goblins, Ayrton, the goblin merchants.
No, no, I'm talking about the dude from the Israelis.
Yeah, we talked about the Israeli thing. Novel Bro, you can come in if Church is okay with it. It's his show.
He
has
access. He could just get in here. He's fine.
So what you're actually saying is that the enlightened and advanced society of Ireland was undone the day they discovered alcohol, if Futurama has ever told us the truth.
Well, that's the thing.
That was also Family Guy.
That's why God invented Guinness, is so that Irish people wouldn't just take over the world.
No, it's 100% true. That is a known phrase, although it's usually whiskey. God invented whiskey, so the Irish shouldn't conquer the world.
Well, they didn't conquer the world, but they perfected car bombs.
It translates to the...
Hey, Novel Bro.
How's it going, lads?
Whiskey translates to the water of life in Old Gaelic. So it's Guinness specifically.
And let's be honest, Church, they didn't perfect the car bomb. They perfected misusing car bombs.
Misusing? What do you mean misusing?
I'm pretty
sure they perfected how you use them.
They did all right with them in Manchester.
The number of times they put a car bomb with mercury switches under a car, thinking it was going to blow up the entire car, and so the frame of the car actually protected the person inside of it, could fill a book.
Yeah. Because they just wanted to cause chaos, not
Honestly,
actually kill people. They're not total assholes.
Compare the carnage from the Manchester arena bombing from recent years and compare that to the bombings that the Irish managed, and you will see a massive disparity in the levels of destruction. And apparently the Irish boys like a bit of the extra boom boom with the boom boom. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So we've gotten to the point where we show the point in my comic where the Morgan makes her formal declaration and appearance. I showed you the picture of the Morgan. I think I did, didn't I, Novel Bro?
I think so. Yes, is that the one that I'm thinking of, the Sherlock Holmes and all that?
No. That was a different story.
Right. Fair enough. So I might be a little out the loop on this one.
I think that I just told you the gist of the Irish connection in this story. So if you can kind of adjust the picture a little bit, Church, so he can see the Morgan standing there in all of her glory.
Yeah,
I just can't decide if I'm happy or sad the Morgan is dressed.
Give me 1 second.
I'm just she may be less dressed in the sequel book that I already have the outline for.
Well, the ancient Gales, the environment, the climate was such that half the year they run around naked because they just didn't need clothes. So I would assume that that attaches to their gods as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm aiming for PG-13, so we don't want to open with nudity. We want to ease the audience into nudity.
So what you're saying is that somebody needs to make a comic where the first page is just a pair of titties for no reason.
I think we already have the buckler coming.
Oh, right. Yeah, the buckler's on the way.
Yeah. So there is the Morgan in all of her glory, as I had Jason design her. I basically fed Jason a bunch of instructions.
This one, right. Now that was all starting to click back into place for me now. I remember now.
Yeah. So this is the comic we're talking about right now, and the name of the planet.
My man, Cullen.
Yeah. Brian ended up being a lot more reminiscent of Cucullin than I actually realized when I wrote him, and it only was later. Yeah, well, I mean, the first name was named after Brian Boru, and his surname and the name of his father figure on this world came from Cain of Old Mars. Because so I mentioned I wanted to come back to Warlord of Mars. So Brian is based off of the D&D character I made, and the idea that I thought of was, wouldn't that be interesting if you played on how the medieval world didn't necessarily have as good a nutrition as we did? And so somebody was able to, because they had access to good medicine and nutrition, they were able to become just like a hulking beast of a man. And that is that is where the artistic direction for Brian's physique came out of. So he's bigger, stronger, more intelligent, and more capable because he lived in a place where he got vaccinations and got, good food and nutrition.
All right.
Works for me.
And that's where sort of the John Carter from Mars influence seeps in here. And the name of the world, Ilos, I actually took from a old Proto-Indo-European word, alos, A-L-Y-O-S, which means other or another. So I just basically flipped a few letters around, and thus we have the other world.
Okay. And again, I think I talked to Novel Bro about this on the other World of Darkness stream that we did. But that very similar to a trope that I'm familiar with because of Stephen King. And I don't know if you've ever read The Stand or The Talisman, or not The Stand, but The Talisman or The Black House.
I don't think I have, no.
I don't think I've read that one either.
They're really good, and they revolve around this ideology that, hey, there's a mirror world to ours that's much smaller, but certain people have doppelgangers in it. And you can flip in between. Now, one thing that I haven't asked you about this book, is there any hope of Brian getting back?
So that's an interesting aspect to his story is addressed in the comic, but you've lived half your life in one world and half your life in the other. So is that something that you even want to do at that point in time? You want to be magically transported back in time to the moment you left and abandon an entire half a life?
I mean, if it means having KFC, yes.
I can give you the opposite end of that contrast. Well, there's a certain figure in Roman history who appears to be rather anachronistic. His name is Maximinus Thrax, and there's a theory that
I saw that picture.
Yeah. Have you seen some of the theories about him? One of them happens to be that he is a bodybuilder from the future who traveled back in time to live and die in the most Chad time in history. That's one Maximinus Thrax theory, because he was miles taller than everybody else. But not only that, you know how some people, who are taller than most, you can tell that they're a bit tall because they seem a bit lumbersome at that height. This guy was naturally taller. He was running by the fucking Emperor's horse like, oh, what's happening? I know it's supposed to be a formation and that. But,
I saw pictures of him. I think somebody else is dragging him into a comic book. I think somebody's doing that. And that's an interesting thing. So that's something that may filter into the later editions of this book as the next comics get written after. Hopefully, I'm successful and I make not just enough money to get this book printed and delivered and fulfilled to everybody on time, but also enough to hand to Jason and saying,
stuck in my throat.
I felt that, Larry. Don't worry, I felt your pain there as you were saying that. I'm like, I'm gonna be going through that at some point. Fuck. And that's just word on paper, nowhere near as expensive as it's gonna be for you.
Well, one thing that I wanted to bring up, and it kind of goes back to my earlier question about whether getting back home was an option for him. There's not just the opportunity for him to get back home, but there's the question of whatever takes him home may take the entire party with him, and how this party would react to being in a different world.
So remember when I said when you mentioned that there's spoilers that could potentially be there, that does get there. I will, however, say in a future book that I have outlined, he does find the remains of a Nazi.
Okay, good.
Which one, though?
They find you, novel bro.
Well, I mean,
I must have done something right to end up in an SS suit. God damn, Hugo Boss made one for me.
But also, he finds the remains.
Fucking which one? I'm sorry. Just give us a minute to get past that.
I've heard all week.
But yes,
gentlemen.
He does encounter also the remains of an American soldier with the remains of the SS officer.
So whatever event took him was not the first time that it happened, because I assume in the mid-90s when he was shot into this world, World War II was not still happening. So
no, World War II is not still happening.
So whatever event took him into this world is not a one-time occurrence, or whatever he encountered that took him to this world. It's not exclusive just to him.
As Novel Bro can attest to, there's 8 or 9 major stories from the medieval and Renaissance period about this sort of thing happening.
Right.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. You could point me to whichever kingdom you want, dead or fucking surviving, and I could probably give you fucking an example of such.
Right, but this was a very common trope in English and Irish fiction of the classical Renaissance-y kind of era. A hero stumbles into the other world, and to a lesser extent, the story of Rip Van Winkle also plays a little bit into that literary tradition.
Strange how that ties in with Dante Alighieri. It's just, that's the world of Renaissance fiction. You're never gonna run out of coincidences to find.
Yeah. So that there is discussion of that because you can't have a character transported from one world to another who encounters a goddess and not have that discussion come up. That would just be really weird to not have it discussed at all in the story.
Right.
Fair enough. Fucking hell, Chip. Just switch the name to which one, no? Fuck me.
So
yeah.
That's
I need to clip that out. I'm sorry. I'm still laughing.
That was just too good. That was just too good. And people ask why I keep Novel Bro around, and it's the little things like this. It's the little things like this.
It's certainly not for the cartography. That's just a fucking decent aside.
I always assume that we keep around international friends for their amazing accents.
Well, that too.
I mean, that is also one of the things.
But his commentary on the SS is definitely an added bonus.
That was special. Also, there's a particular poem that kind of influenced me a great deal on the concept of the other world, and I'm going to post that link in the YouTube.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Dirge of the Four Cities, and it's a poem about the four magical cities. Which once I found this poem, and I going, that is really cool. That would be something cool for like a role-playing game story or a story to involve actually exploring those places.
Now, one thing that I don't get around to asking everyone who does an indie book, is there room for crossovers with other indie titles in this story?
Absolutely.
Yes. How the framework and structure for that is built in. But yes, there's always a possibility, because if you look at Conan as a prime example, there's not really a sequential canon of Conan stories. There's just...
No, Conan's a badass every day of the week, so we never know what day of the week we're seeing Conan. But, he's always being a badass.
Well, I mean, even more concisely, Robert E. Howard already defined how you do the crossover. There's a crossover between his own Gaelic mytho hero, Brak Mac Morn, the last king of the Picts, and Cole of Valusia, where a druid summons Cole from the ancient past to help Brak win a battle. And at the end of the day, Cole disappears back into the mists as he is returned to his own time, thinking the entire thing's a dream.
Yep. Also, the witch hunter that he wrote, whose name's completely escaped.
Solomon Kane.
Solomon Kane and Conan also crossed over along a similar pattern in a Conan comic book.
Double funny. Not only is Conan named specifically as crossing over with Thieves' World by Robert Asprin, which is also crossed over with Fritz Lieber's Far from the Grey Mouser, but Michael Moorcock is such a huge fantasy nerd that he did a crossover between Conan and his own eternal champion, Elric of Melibene.
That's the second time Michael Moorcock has been mentioned, and I've been sitting on this since the beginning, but that's better than Michael Lescock.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Michael Nocock is the worst.
I mean, unfortunately, Michael Moorcock doesn't get enough attention. His biggest attention recently is the fact that Razorfist brought up the fact that the Elric stories were most likely ripped off to make the Witcher series.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's a lot of suspicious.
Yeah, definitely.
The thing is, and I respect Razor, I really do. I enjoy his work. Is as right as he might be, and he might be 100% right. I don't like that the author of The Witcher plays coy with whether or not he was inspired and took notes. But it ain't the first. Because anybody who's played D&D needs to just live with the fact that Drizzt Do'Urden is garbage.
Yes.
Because it's Elric with blackface.
Yes. Yes.
Excuse me, let me go get a makeup wipe. I realized something.
Put the shoe polish away, Novel Bro.
We have a tradition here, with the minstrels and such. People who precede the parade.
No,
with the baton.
no, we don't. We have no traditions here.
Look, all I'm gonna say. Look, all I'm gonna say is that my favorite character of the set of gamer characters I am currently in a game about is a Austrian naval officer who's trying to hide out because his vampire daddy is Black Peter, and he's terrified if anyone's gonna see it.
Now,
that is an unfortunate sire. That is unfortunate.
It's extra funny. Said sire. Spoilers for Kathy. Said sire is a shamase, which is a monstrous flesh crafting horror in the old world, and the entire game is set in Bruges.
Now, the
entire game is in Bruges.
With all the talk of the Morrigan, which we see here, let's zoom out a little bit. With all the talk of the Morrigan here, let's rein it back into to some alien talk, and ask the question: were the Irish gods or aliens? Is it possible to distill the fact from fiction in the shadowy domain of Irish mythology? Now, this particular question has actually been covered in comic books before.
Oh, yeah, you bring up the two of the Dannon with the whole fucking thingy aliens thing. Oh, here we go. Okay.
This question has been tackled before in Marvel Comics, where the Norse and Greek gods that appear as superheroes in Marvel Comics are actually a race of aliens who exist because people believe in them.
Yes.
And that was a really interesting storyline. I wouldn't necessarily call it good because I don't think anything of substance came from it. But
other than it made the movies easier.
Thing that sort of line I thought has gotten me into trouble before, but I definitely have looked a fair bit into it, and I can't help but wonder on a few things, like on some of the things that I reckon I would be normally skeptical about, on some of the lore put forth, when it comes to Hibernian Celt mythology, it's pretty fucking concise if you know how to, bring it to modern sort of terminologies.
Wait, did you just say Irish and Celtic mythology is concise?
Yes.
Well,
how drunk are you?
No, it is.
Well, he's not wrong though.
It's very concise.
Allegory and symbology, especially if you consider it, the Dream of Angus Old and Newgrange and all of that shit. It seems to all tie into something that existed before.
Okay.
What's the symbology here? I think the word you're looking for is symbolism.
Now, Ayrton, do you want to go get me some coffee? Sweet and low.
Twist a lemon.
And you also look into the fact that the Morrigan most likely predates the Celts in Ireland.
The thing that most people don't get when they start looking at Gaelic mythology, because you have to extract it from the 19th century Victorian romantics who put their personal spin on it. Fucking flower fairies are the devil.
And then you have to take apart what the Catholic Church did to it too.
We're talking about
a big difference between the fairy we know of from all the fancy schmancy things to the she. Who are actually, the fairies, the E instead of the I,
We're talking about a fundamentally foreign culture and belief system because it's literally pre-Christian. It doesn't follow Christian or even Mediterranean systemery.
Hibernian culture may have existed longer than people believe it may be.
Right.
From fucking Atlantean
Stone Age, at least.
Yeah. Because if you look at, see if you were to do the Google Maps thing on the coast of Ireland, and you look at the side of it, how certain bits are shallower than others out to the west, and how that ties in with the Cork fucking legend of bloody Ballycotton.
Yeah.
But
There are actually two former islands there. North is Hypersil, and the southern one is Dimar. They might
Yes.
not exist anymore, but that all ties into the possibly to the origins of Druidism.
but our biggest problem with trying to understand this ancient culture and ancient mythology is the ancient aliens people.
Yes.
Those fuckers gotta go.
Yes.
And it's not
that
because
Giorgio Tsoukalos needs a fucking haircut.
it's not because of the thesis that a given divinity might have been aliens observed and misunderstood. That's not necessarily wrong-minded, because there's nothing wrong with suggesting that ancient peoples knew more than we give them credit. Because when you have nothing but free time between harvests to contemplate math, sciences, religion, reading, you can create a surprising level of nuance without having the same technological base we do. Like, we shouldn't be surprised that the Egyptians had astronomy.
Real quick, I have to derail this. Everybody on the stream is familiar with who Nick Rekieta is, right?
We are.
Okay. Well, let's just take a look at that real quick.
Well, while you're pulling it up, what I just wanted to say is, the Gales have this concept that the universe spirals in and out in a perpetual time loop, right? So nothing ends and nothing begins. So people can travel forward or backward in time naturally, right? And while the time travel might be floaty, we've got photos of our galaxy, or at least parts of it, for the Milky Way. It is a big spiral, people.
Now, hold that thought real quick. What I have up on screen here is
horrifying
a photo of one Mr. Nick Rekieta, who has fulfilled his obligation of the thought stream for his 10,000 subscribers on Twitch, and he is wearing knee-high socks.
How compelling, Nick! It's time for you to face the wall.
So I do also want to mention, Nick also helped me in producing my comic book. Nick helped me get in contact with an intellectual property attorney who was willing to give me a free consultation.
I'm gonna pull that down before anybody gets scarred.
I'm Christopher Lloyd now.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go into the kitchen, and I'm gonna go into the kitchen to get my mom's dinner and be like, I was frozen today.
But no, I just want to put out there, he promised he would do it, and the mad lad fucking did it. He spent hours on stream looking at his phone and shit talking the chat for donations on Twitch.
Exactly.
Tremendous.
But back to the aliens being the gods being aliens topic. I don't find that so far-fetched, especially when you consider that the mythology passed down in the Greek and Roman cultures, specifically, even the Egyptian cultures. Some of the fantastic things that happened in those cultures and some of the stories that have been passed down, the parting of the Red Sea, that's a biblical thing, but it's also talked about in hieroglyphics in Egypt.
And they found a large elevated section in the Red Sea area,
right,
where they believe the event may have occurred in.
I mean, all of these things could be explained with alien intervention, with, futuristic technology, alien technology far beyond the capacity of Earth. The fact
or the
that
interdimensional clockwork elves.
Well, the fact that hold on, let me get through the thought.
Okay, go with it.
The fact that Egyptians had access to battery type technology before batteries were ever conceived in modern culture. The idea of preserving corpses and the pyramid formations in Mexico and Egypt aligning with different star systems and different, constellations and things of that nature. It wouldn't be so far-fetched to think that aliens had, influenced early culture. And that's why... That's one of the big reasons that I look at comic books as American mythology, because comic books are inspired by previous mythologies. I mean, the existence of Thor and Hercules in Marvel Comics, the existence of Wonder Woman and the Amazons and Greek gods in DC Comics, and the fact that the superheroes exist and, perform feats of amazing, supernatural strength and so on and so forth, it really lines up with the ideology that mythology is literally nothing more than passed down storytelling of things that we just can't comprehend.
Well, let me.
And that's
come at
why
this.
it's the gospel of comics.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let me come at this from a really weird angle, okay, like a mind-blowing angle.
Okay, I'll plug it in. Go ahead, Rune.
I tell people occasionally, I bring up
Plug it in.
that the Roman
Lay down.
Catholic Church.
Go lay down.
What's up, church?
Okay. Go lay down.
Oh, he's talking to people. I
Talking to
occasionally
little
bring
people.
up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I occasionally bring up that the Roman Catholic Church does not believe in magic, and people lose their shit. They flip out at me. They're like, "What do you mean, Joe? It's the Catholic Church. Of course it believes in magic." It's like, no. The Roman Catholic Church does not identify magic or witchcraft as extant at all. It believes miracles exist as handed down by God, and it does at least nominally believe, though they have a stringent research branch to verify the difference between a secular hoax and an actual event, that infernal entities or power exists. But it does not actually believe on paper that magic exists. And this is an important differentiation because when we talk about things like the Inquisition, those might have been Catholics, and the Catholic Church might have not stopped them. But the fact of the matter is that they were looking for heretics, not witches. And when you start talking about the witch hunts and Kramer and Spengler, those people were criminals using a fake papal bull to murder people. It was not endorsed by the church. And
nobody
this relates
expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Dun, dun, but this relates
the
to
Spanish Inquisition was after Jews and Muslims.
right. But this relates to the question of aliens
Settle
and
down,
gods.
bro.
We're running low on skin. I suggest we harvest another lesbian.
I'm my heart rate doesn't skip for the Spanish Inquisition because it's a necessity.
How this relates to the idea of gods and aliens is that when I was in college, taking courses on French philosophy and the early modernity and learning how to write, there was a story told, a piece of reading about a early medieval priest, basically a wandering mendicant who came into his town where he was supposed to provide services, and the town was in disrepair and everything had gone ass-wise because people claimed that they were suffering under the effects of sky people. So this priest went around and he asked the locals, what's going on? Tell me your business. And basically what he discovered was that the people were being slovenly and indolent and not working. Because it's like, well, Fred stole my hammer, but I'm not going to say Fred did it, the sky people did it.
Yep.
Right? My daughter snuck out of the house and she came back pregnant. The sky people must have impregnated her because it was the only appropriate option rather than taking responsibility for the fact that everybody was being kind of shitty to one another. In that sense, where the ancient alien guys get it wrong is they say that correlation is causation. I saw an alien.
Is misquoting text and not showing
but they say
the full structures of things where you
but
can
they
see
say
that
somebody
it's not
saw
as nice and precise as they say it is.
They say somebody saw something they didn't understand. Therefore, that was the thing and that is proof and it was active. So, an alien, let's assume for a moment, a UFO zips by full of aliens taking photographs of the galaxy and they go, oh, look, ancient pre-industrial society. Tourism snapshot, right? And flies away, right? They say, well, they saw the aliens and they put it in their art. Therefore, it must be real. Therefore, the aliens came down and helped us build society. No, you can observe plenty of shit, not know what it is, and misattribute it to anything. and it's more reasonable.
Well, I think I have the biggest red pill of the evening, Ayrton. If you wanna get in real quick.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
I
we
mean,
go.
is
There
it
we
a
go.
suppository?
I mean, it's
So
always a
I have
suppository.
Damn
I have 2
it!
points on the Ancient Alien assholes. Which one? I love that show. I find it hilarious.
Oh, I love that show too.
Aliens.
It's fucking garbage. I love it.
But my first point is the biggest way that they like get away with the shit they do is selective editing of showing like these ancient sites. So Church and Novel Bro, you guys know that I did that big trip to Peru last summer. Well, I went to Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman and so many of these ancient Inca sites. Well, what they don't show you in the TV show.
Turn yourself up a little bit,
most-
Ayrton. You're a little bit low, but keep going. But turn yourself up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a little
Okay.
far away
How's
from
that?
the mic. That's all. Just
So-
a little far from the mic.
So the thing they don't show you is most of these structures look like total shit. There's small
Oh.
sections, like Machu Picchu, for example. The Temple of the Sun has those like really precise, very straight lines cut into the stone because it was a fucking temple. The rest of the goddamn structure is just rocks haphazardly thrown together to build fucking walls.
Jesus,
You
so you
could
can
build
just
a
tell.
fucking temple by hand and make it like that in a few months. It's really not like it's cool. It's impressive,
Especially
like,
if,
with, like, the
there's-
location and shit. But it's not something where it's like, oh my god, how could they have possibly done this? It's one fucking building in a giant complex up in the mountains. What do you mean? How could they have done this? Fuck off. The entire thing isn't like that.
Especially if there's evidence of trial and error and stuff like, oh yeah, they definitely took their time to make this. They
Right.
made errors and they got bits right. Okay, now we know there's parts that have fallen apart over time. There's parts that have obviously stood well. So there's parts where dudes were good at the job, and there's parts where dudes were horrible at the job.
Yeah, exactly. And like Sacsayhuaman, that's the for those who don't know, that's the structure that looks like the
Don't get
stones kinda,
sidetracked.
like,
Get to your
melted.
second point.
Yeah,
I
wait,
know
my
you.
second point. Yeah, fair enough. So, so my second point is talking about mythology and whether it's based off the gods or aliens being gods and whatnot. I don't know. The story of the founding of Ireland, where there's 4 boats going from mainland Europe and everybody dies except for one dude and 40 women.
And then he
And he
says,
has to
"Screw it,
he has
I'm
to
gonna turn
care
into a
for 40
fish."
Fuck it, I'm
Yeah,
going in
he
raw.
40 women, and he says, "Fuck this, I'm out," because they were bitching too much, and turns into a salmon and jumps into the sea. I don't see how aliens could have made that happen.
Also, what I love about that particular story from Irish mythology is there's no context to his becoming a fish. There's no he learned
Exactly.
the ancient scrolls and this that. He just said, "Screw it, I'm a fish now."
Exactly. I love it, and that's a lot of Irish mythology. Shit just happens just cause.
Okay. Well, before I drop my red pill, I'm going to give everybody a chance to do their outro, to plug anything they need to plug. I'm going to drop a link.
You mean like a mailing list that
yeah, definitely drop that in the chat as a link. I don't know why you haven't been doing it the whole time.
Don't worry, I've already thinking for it.
Okay.
But I mean,
at the end of my red pill, I'm going to drop a link in the chat for where everyone needs to go after this show and go congratulate Dillard on his new baby.
congratulations for having offspring.
No. He's
Alright.
he's doing a live stream, but Larry's got his link in the chat. Go sign up for that mailing list on MailChimp. Ayrton, have you got anything to plug upcoming or anything to say before we get out of here?
Just Bitchmas Eve will be Wednesday night at 9:00.
I'll be there. Rune, what you got, buddy?
Rune's dead.
Rune is dead. Okay, Novel Bro, what do you have?
I'm actually on the second draft phase for some of the stuff that I'm working on, besides constant working on maps and stuff. But
Your maps
with
are
actual
fat
content that other
material.
people-
Let me just say that out front. Your maps are straight fat material. They're beautiful.
They really are.
Thank you. And that's on what I would consider a lesser a lesser means of doing so, a lesser format. I'm going to be paying to use World Anvil to make sexier maps and make even sexier versions of the maps that I've got just now. So the fun never ends, boys. But for stuff that you actually can interact with, I now have two decent, two well-doing playlists on my YouTube channel. The Music for Historians is now roughly up to about 3,600 views. But
Nice.
the one that I'm really invested in right now is the War Wave playlist. It's just loads of good synth wave and lo-fi tunes, but with loads of cool war footage aesthetics and stuff like that. And a lot of it is very relevant to different stuff. So you may see me share occasional snippets of that here or there. But I've
Nice.
figured out quite a lot about stuff and gotten into the real heart of what warfare really feels like.
While I'm dropping this red pill, go ahead and drop a link to your channel in the chat.
Dude, hold on a second, man.
Real quick, Novel Bro, do you want the call-in link for Bitch Miss Eve stream on Wednesday?
Pardon, could you rephrase that?
Bitch Miss Eve.
Oh, I'll be. I'll actually be with the family then.
It's the Wednesday before Christmas Eve.
Right. Fair enough. I will definitely be around then. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'll send you.
Keep me in the loop.
While Novel Bro gets his channel link together and drops it in the chat, I have the biggest red pill of all to drop. Not just are ancient cultures and mythology gods at risk of being aliens. All modern religion gods are probably aliens, and they probably don't give a shit about you. They're probably literally intergalactic shit posters.
I mean,
you know what?
they've been making.
I would pray to that. I would openly pray to that.
I mean, they've literally been making the joke that aliens driving by and probing rednecks is the equivalent of cow tipping.
Right.
So,
right. Like, I honestly can get behind that idea. Besides some, just divine deity or something like that. I can't believe that this world was crafted by someone divine and anything of that nature. But an intergalactic shit poster, an extra dimensional shit poster, absolutely, I can see that from a mile
one of the
away.
interesting things about the alien cult is that in its original sort of 1950s context, all the aliens were very much like people from Star Trek, and we're going to make the world a better place.
Can you wrap this up in 2 more sentences because we're done?
Yes.
Okay.
As you watch the progression of alien theology, it gets more and more paranoid and more 1980s until the extent that now we have this idea that there's like a base somewhere in the desert where aliens are murdering each other because there are 9 aliens on Earth at war, but we don't know it because somebody watched the X-Files.
12 different species.
Yeah.
Ayrton, you're adding to the sentence structure. We're done. We're going to continue this off stream. You got to get us the fuck out of here.
Oh, sorry. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Good night, guys.